evening and welcome to the News at 10 summary. We begin here at home, where Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour met heads of the state universities' boards of trustees to discuss the state of higher education and ways to safeguard the academic achievements made by the kingdom over the past decades. During the meeting, Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research Amin Mahmoud spoke about key challenges facing official universities in the kingdom, particularly a recent surge in the on-campus violence and universities' deaths, and so stressed the need to maintain Jordan's academic status as a destination for tens of thousands of students from Arab countries, and called for a drastic revision of the higher education system to maximize the advantages and overcome any weaknesses and negative practices. The board's chiefs stressed the need to keep the doors open for dialogue between the university administrations and the students, and to focus on education output and quality. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriate Affairs Nasser Judeh discussed with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry Jordanian-U.S. ties, as well as the latest developments in the region. Talks also covered efforts exerted by the U.S. Secretary of State with the Palestinians and Israelis to revive peace negotiations between the two sides. Judeh and Kerry also discussed the Syrian crisis and its humanitarian repercussions on Jordan, which is hosting hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees and providing them with services. Kerry raised the possibility of visiting a refugee camp housing hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees. Kerry, on his sixth visit to the region, was due to meet Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in his efforts to nudge the Palestinians and Israelis toward reviving talks, and is expected to meet officials from the Arab League. Jordan began pumping water from the southern aquifer of DC to help meet demand in the capital and other governorates across the kingdom. Water from the 700 million dinar project involved digging 55 wells in the ancient aquifer to pump water 325 kilometers from DC to Amman. Minister of Water and Irrigation Hazem al-Nasser said experimental pumping from the aquifer was successful. He noted that experiments conducted by the ministry and the Turkish company Gamma that implemented the project were successful and went as planned. The project by the Saudi border seeks to extract about 100 million cubic meters of water a year from the aquifer. In regional news, a new interim Egyptian government has been sworn in, with Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi becoming Deputy Prime Minister as well as Defense Minister. Liberal politician Munir Fakhri Abdel Noor, a Christian, was sworn in as Interim Trade and Industry Minister. 3 women ministers are in the new cabinet. The Muslim Brotherhood has refused to recognize the interim government, calling it illegitimate, and is demanding the reinstatement of Mohammed Morsi, who is being held by the army at an undisclosed location. The interim government's transition plan will see a panel formed by next week, which will draw up amendments to the constitution and a timetable for new elections. The number of people fleeing the conflict in Syria has escalated to an average of 6,000 a day this year, a rate not seen since the genocide in Rwanda nearly 2 decades ago. UN High Commissioner for Refugees Antonio Guterres said 2/3 of the nearly 1.8 million refugees registered with the UN in Lebanon, Turkey, Jordan, Iraq, Egypt and elsewhere had left Syria since the beginning of this year. Meanwhile, and on the ground, clashes between rebels and government forces continued in the northern Syrian province of Idlib. Footage posted on social media, said to be filmed in a southern suburb of Idlib, appeared to show a group of rebels taking positions and opening fire towards Syrian forces, while another video showed a government tank exploding. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu criticized the European Union decision to bar financial assistance to Israeli organizations operating in the occupied territories. Guidelines adopted by the EU's Executive Commission in late June and expected to be published this week make clear that from next year, Israeli entities operating in the territories will not be eligible for EU grants, prizes or loans. The measure, which underlines EU opposition to Israeli settlement building, will apply to Israeli companies, universities or other bodies operating in areas occupied by Israel since the 1967 war, including the Golan Heights, the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Netanyahu criticized the EU, saying it instead should focus on more urgent problems in the region. Palestinians, on the other hand, praised the rule as a concrete step against settlement construction. And finally, for a quick look at the weather, moderate weather prevails in most regions tonight with a low of 21 degrees in Amman. As for tomorrow, a slight drop in temperature is expected, but it remains relatively hot, with the highs in Amman reaching 31 degrees. And in the Gulf of Aqaba, hotter conditions with a high of 40 degrees, while winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk and the seas slightly choppy. And that's all for tonight. Have a pleasant evening.